I'm Anna,
And I'm Fran.
and you're listening to Murder Words. All right, you guys, welcome back. So, this week we are covering the second half of Fran's story that she started last week. So, if you're just listening to this one and you didn't listen to last week, you're going to have to go back and kind of get that backstory because it was a two-parter because there was so much information. But we left off like on the edge of our seats. So I've been dying to hear the rest of it. I know you guys probably were too. You better not have gone and researched it.
What are you going to do on it today?
I'm coming.
Okay. So the first episode was labeled Dorothea Puente 1, and this one will be Dorothea Puente 2. So just a small recap of where we last were. So we left off, Dorothea had killed Betty Palmer and had drug her into the death room.
Yes.
So this death room is which is a room in her house that throughout her spree where she killed her tenants, because you guys know we're getting to that point, she would just like slide their bodies into this room and let them sit in there for weeks.
And no one noticed like the smell.
No, they did, but she would claim that it was like fertilizer she had laid out or something. So she would leave her victims in there, and they would start decomposing, and that was until she could find a place to bury her or put her victims at, get rid of them. So Dorothea waited around with Betty, and people were starting to like notice, hey, there's like a smell. We need to like, can you fix this?
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, like this room was just like a room in the house, so the floor of it was a ceiling for somebody else. That's,
yeah,
what I mean?
and I've never smelled a decomposing body, but I've heard people talk about it and like how it's very strong.
It's very distinctive and disgusting.
Yeah.
Yes. So Dorothea decides that she is going to bury Betty in the backyard of her house. So what she did is she went out in the middle of the night, she dug a hole, and she drug her body down the stairs. And then I don't know where she did this exactly. It might have been before she dragged her body down the stairs, but she was really worried about someone identifying Betty. So she actually cut off like all of her identifying marks. Like her hands were cut off, her feet were cut off, and her head was cut off.
Wow. And
Yes.
she did this in the boarding house?
Yeah, in the death room.
Okay.
Yeah, stinky death room. She did all this.
And no one saw her drag a body down the stairs?
No, she did it at night.
Okay.
Yes. So she, wraps her all up and stuff, tries to make it like look really concealed and everything, and then drags her body down and puts her in the hole and just covers it up. Okay. And again, I say like she was very fond of gardening, so
she put like flowers over, like it wasn't a big deal.
Well, she's very fond of gardening, so like her neighbors actually saw her digging the hole, but like thought like it was common for her to dig holes at night because she worked all day with the tenants, so she'd go out in her garden sometimes.
Okay.
I still think it's weird. It doesn't make sense. It's weird.
It is weird, but I mean, if I saw like my neighbors gardening at night, I would just be like, well, there they go again, gardening. And we have a neighbor who mows their yard at night with like a headlamp, so
okay, guys, we've
gotten used to that.
Okay, so. Right, maybe it's not that weird. Probably the no body, no head or hands and feet were weird, but
yes, anyway, that part is weird.
That part is weird. Thank you. Something about that is weird. So, randomly the next day, she decided to call someone and pour concrete right over the spot where she buried Betty.
Okay.
Yes, it's a random spot of concrete. Dorothea did not stop there. Her next victim was 63-year-old James Gallup. She had met James Gallup at a bar. He was an alcoholic just like her, and she really was like just kind of talking to him for a little bit and just getting friendly with him until she realized that he mentioned that he got a government check, and she was like, you can totally come live with me then.
Yeah.
I have this great boarding house and everything. And so he's like, I don't really have a place to be, so I might as well, go move into this really nice chick's boarding house. It's grandma's boarding house.
Yeah.
Getting knits and cookies. So so she invited him in. He moves in, and after he moves in, Dorothea mentions like, hey, you need to sign that check over to me.
Yeah.
And he refuses to do it. After like a few weeks of him being there, he starts getting sick again because she can't like make him do it. She can't be like, hey, you gotta come sign this check for me.
Yeah. And she let him stay. She didn't like kick him out.
She didn't kick him out because he like I guess offered to pay and things like that, and he could perfectly handle his money and things like that. He just really put up a fight about it.
Right.
But that of course that didn't stop Dorothea. Like she would intercept his mail, and before it got to him, and then she'd go cash it and take care of it for him, and just be like, "Oops." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I accidentally cashed this one. I thought it was a mail, something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. It wasn't her, but that's in my head what she did. So one night he just disappeared. Dorothea claimed that he got really mad one night and just ran away.
To the death room.
Yes. So again, she puts him in the death room. No one really asked a bunch of questions about that. He was only there for a few weeks. They didn't really ask a bunch of questions about him. And they knew that they fought a lot, so that was kind of cool. Or not cool, but that was what, they believed it. So she puts him in the death room, lets him sit there for a while until she figures out what she's going to do. And then she heads to her garden and starts digging another hole. This time she left like the hands and feet and head intact, but she just like buried him like a little bit deeper. He still like wrapped him in cloth and just buried him a little bit deeper. Basically, like she's starting to get lazy.
Yeah.
Like she's already got away with 3
she's
murders.
like about to make a mistake. Yeah.
Got away with 3 murders. Like she's getting a little lazy now.
Her ego is.
She's feeling like I got this. Yeah. Because she picked really good victims. Like they were homeless. Usually they had a long history of
like people that no one
vulnerable.
Like they're not going to notice immediately.
Yeah.
That they're gone.
Yes. Or she could explain that they just ran off.
Yeah.
Dorothea did not take much time in her next victim. It was 1 week later.
Wow. She's really
escalating. She's
fast.
Escalating.
Yeah.
It starts to. So her name was Vera Martin. She was 64 years old. She had a ton of medical conditions. Like she was really bad off. She could not in any way take care of herself. Dorothea did not realize this at the time when she took her in, but it quickly became,
a lot of work.
It's too much work.
Right.
Yes. So after 3 days of being in the boarding house, she would become her next victim. She would give her mostly an overdose of medication.
Yeah.
The same way she's done all of her victims, with just an overdose of medication. But that wasn't until she signed her benefit check over to her.
Right, of course.
She waited till like right after that.
Right.
And then murdered her. Her next victim would be, it's just like happening all at once.
Yeah, one at a time, like immediately.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to say like this span of like her killings at the tenants was only 3 years. And you're going to see how crazy that is as this builds up.
Okay.
So she just disappears. She tells her tenants that she moved her to her care home, and they totally believe that because she did have a lot of special needs.
Yeah.
Her next victim was 55-year-old Benjamin Fink. He was an alcoholic as well. He actually had been there for like a while, like since she opened the boarding house.
Yeah.
Like he was like long-term tenant there.
So people were like, "Where's Benjamin?"
Well, we haven't got that part yet. I just said that he was there for a year. Him and Dorothea got into a lot of fights because he was an alcoholic and said she was mean to alcoholics. She did not like him.
Yeah.
Like her tenants were really split, like how she was. Some of them thought she was like an absolute angel. Community thought she was an angel, but some of the tenants just like then hated her.
Yeah.
Either they loved her or hated her. Probably based on their amount of care and government check money. But
right. The amount of alcohol they drank.
So Ben, one night, they're all just around the table, and Ben gets a little too rowdy at the table, like he's just drinking too much there. So this isn't like the only spur of the moment killing she has. Like you can tell how much she's escalating because this is 1 week, and then Ben gets into like a big argument with her in front of her, and she drags him out of the room and takes her up to her was they thought the bedroom, but really she took him to the death room and killed him there. Gave him a bunch of medication, caused him to overdose, and left him there. And then they never saw him again. The tenants like really were questioning that one, like
yeah,
like, holy cow, like, he's been there for a long time.
Like you got in an argument, and now he's gone.
Yeah.
what is happening.
But they had witnessed the argument too, so like, well, it was really bad. So maybe he did move out. So she
Maybe,
kicked him out.
yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
And she kicked him out. So, I mean, she did the same thing. She left him in the death room for a while, took him downstairs through the steps, and then buried him in the backyard. She's, again, is still like wrapping them up, but she's starting to get a little lazy with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She's getting a little lazy. Around this time, they're really starting to notice the smell above the house. So, or about the in this room.
Yeah.
So the tenants start complaining really bad about it. So Dorothy is like, "Oh, I better go clean that up because it's just been sitting there. Like they were decomposed for so long, and like I don't want to say juices, but like the body stuff that juices
It was
out.
still in the room. Like she wasn't cleaning it after, or it just
No, it was just staying in there because where the bodies, but they would be in there for weeks at a time sometimes, and like it would soak into the carpet, into the wood. At this point.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
like, no matter how much Dorothea tried to clean it up, it was just not going away. Like, it was in the wood at that point.
Yeah.
Like, the house always smelled like that. Neighbors were starting to
I
complain.
wonder why she didn't just immediately take them out and bury them in the yard.
Well,
Why did she let them? Like that's such a routine
Mm-hmm.
thing she has going on.
Well, I think she was waiting for, like, some time to pass or something with it, or to figure out what she was going to do, because she's getting old at this point. Like, her
Yeah.
physical
Oh
capabilities
yeah,
were
that was
not...
probably really hard for her.
Yeah, she's probably, what, 55, 56 right now? Like, it's getting hard for her to do that.
Yeah.
So she had to wait for a time when was asleep, that she had plenty of time to do it. I mean, she couldn't just, like, same night they disappeared, go dig a hole.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe she could have. She was really good at getting away with things, so maybe she could have.
I feel like if I went out and dug a hole of a human size right now, I would be sore for 1 week after.
Yeah.
At least.
I
minimum.
would definitely, that's a lot of work to dig a
Yeah.
hole.
Like I feel like that would take a lot out of me, and I'm pretty lazy, so.
So, and you're also going to see why a little bit later why it
Okay.
took her something. There's another factor with it too.
Okay.
But mostly she was just old. She couldn't do it. Dorothea then murdered 78-year-old Leona Carpenter. She had been with Dorothea, since the beginning of the boarding house as well. She'd been like a really good tenant to her, but eventually, basically, like she got hard to take care of
Yeah, because of her age.
because of her age, and she was getting worse in her medical conditions. So Dorothea again drugged her over a period of time, and then when she died, she buried her in the backyard. Sat in the death room for a while, buried in the backyard.
Right.
There's eventually very much a routine with this at this point. So at this point, the yard's getting pretty full. I mean, there's like a lot of dead bodies laying around this house.
Yeah.
So she decides she's going to buy a shed to go over the bodies and put the shed over like a good portion of them. Like she's trying to find ways to like
Maybe put it on the random concrete slab.
yeah, that's just like that. Yes. So she buys a shed, so she's starting to notice like I've got a graveyard back here.
Yeah.
Like I gotta like cover it up a little bit. Her next victim, and it's just like consistent. It just
Yeah.
keeps happening. So this guy is kind of important with the story. Her next victim was 51-year-old Bert. Bert had schizophrenia and a learning disability. He was described as like very childlike. Like he was like really happy all the time with a
That's
big
sad.
giant smile on his face.
Yeah.
Yes. So he was like just like one of those really special people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? People you can't help but love, basically, but super harmless at the same
Yeah.
time.
Right.
Basically, he was like a child in a man's body. He was just, I don't know, these people really liked him, even though he was homeless.
I
They
like
really
him,
liked him.
and I don't even know him.
So, before he was at the boarding house, he actually was homeless. And one day, this social worker found him wandering the streets and took him to like a mission. And like while he was there, like they became really close. She tried to take care of him. And then she heard about Dorothea's boarding house, and she was like, okay, this would be the perfect place for him. It's like special care. He can pay with his benefits
Right.
check. Like, you know what I mean? I don't think she knew about the benefits check, but this might be like the place for him because he doesn't really fit anywhere. So she takes him over there. She tours the house. Her and Bert toured the house. They really like it. They check out her diplomas on the wall. Like they really they're really
Yeah.
impressed with the place. They're like, this would be a great place for you. They really like Dorothea too. She seems very sincere and she really wants to help them. So he decides to go in there and move in. And, her name was Judy. So she would randomly like check on Bert. Like she'd come by, stop by and see him and just make sure he was still doing good. They communicated really frequently. And one time when Judy came over, it'd been like few weeks he'd been there, she saw Bert and he looked like amazing. He had a haircut. He looked like he was just doing really well.
Yeah.
There, he's thriving at the house. Like that minimum socialization plus like Dorothea's care was really really good for him. And Dorothea had actually, like, as part of his rent, made him like the maintenance man of the house. So he would like fix things for her, things that she couldn't do.
Yeah.
So he was just like really at home there. He had like a lot of purpose
Loved
to fix
it.
the house.
Yeah.
It was just like it was in theory like a really good place for him. And he was like really happy to do this because he just like appreciated her so much.
Yeah.
Then Dorothea talks to Bert about like signing over his government checks to her, but she labels it like she tells him to say that she's her cousin, basically, because she's like running out of schemes of places that she can like get these checks to her name. So at that time, everything was really good with Bert. He was good. He was safe. But soon another tenant moved in. Her name was 64-year-old Dorothy Miller. Dorothea told the tenants that she had moved in and that she was like one of her like special friends and everything. And one night she just disappeared again. And then she told her tenants that she had been arrested, so she kicked her out.
Oh.
Yeah. And people don't really ask a lot of questions when you're arrested. They're just
Right.
like, okay, she's there now.
Yeah.
But, obviously she murdered her.
Yeah, she's in the death room.
Yeah, she's up in the death room. Like, weird, right?
Yeah.
A few months later, during all this, Bert's still there, doing well. Judy decides that she's going to stop and see Bert for a little bit. She hadn't heard from him in a while. Well, so Dorothea tells Judy that Bert had contracted tuberculosis and was getting worse, so she had sent him to Mexico for treatment. Judy believed this because she'd had such like a good impression.
Yeah,
with
why
Dorothea.
wouldn't she? Because he was like thriving and doing well.
And so she was trying to do her best to get him like treatment somewhere. But then after a few more weeks, when she stopped by again and he still was nowhere to be found, and she tried to claim he was still in Mexico in his treatment, she knew that was crap.
Yeah.
And she told her, like, if you don't produce Bert for me, like, I am going to call the police. Like, this is getting weird now. So she gave her like a timeline with it when she was going to call the police. And what do you know? Like 2 days later, Judy got this random phone call. It was from a man claiming to be Bert's uncle in Utah, and that he had took her in, like he had like went and picked him up one night, and he was like now living in with him. When she asked to speak to him, he said no, like he's sick, he can't talk right now. So Judy doesn't believe this at all. Now she's like really like, what's up? Like there's something really going on. Like that's weird. So she calls the police, tells them everything that's going on, and told them specifically that they needed to talk to a tenant named John Sharp, because he was really honest and that he would tell them exactly what's going on in that house. So they go over to the house, check it all out. I mean, mind you too, she's still on parole. Like like this is all happening and she's on parole.
And no one's like
catching this. And this happened like for like over 3 years it's happening. Like no one's like checking in on this. They go through the house, everything looks really good. They're really happy with it. They don't see like anything weird going on at all. And so they get starting to leave. And all of a sudden, John Sharp walks out of the house and hands them a note.
Stop it.
And says, I can't talk right now. Can you please meet me elsewhere at this time and we'll connect again? I have some things to say.
Ew, creepy. I just got chills.
When the police were there at the house, they had talked with John Sharp like a little bit, like, hey, do you know anything weird going on? But Dorothea was in the room. So
Why would they do that?
I don't know. Okay,
That's
she was like
not
70.
smart.
They thought she was like almost 80 at this point.
Okay.
You know what I mean? They just imagine someone shaking, like, I don't know. Okay? It's like an 80-year-old woman. She probably offered them like cookies and then she knitted while
she knitted them some gloves. Yeah.
He confessed to the police that he had lied before and that there were some like really weird things going on. He said that she was definitely lying about the Utah story. Like that didn't make any sense to him. But he had no idea what he really was, what Bert really was. So he had actually heard like a lot that was going on in the house because he lived under the stairs. I went straight to Harry Potter, but that's exactly what
That's exactly what I
yeah.
went to as well. And I also went to, he heard the bodies like thumping down the
That's what he
stairs.
tells police. He heard something thumping down the stairs quite frequently. And that, it bothered him, but he never like got up and checked it out, basically.
Right.
But he also said every night that he heard something flopping down the stairs, he would go out the next morning and there would be a freshly dug hole.
He told them that.
Mm-hmm. And he was like, so it's super
Here
weird,
we
guys.
go.
Yep. So police are like, okay, this is like too much for us to handle. We're going to get like a homicide detective involved.
Yeah.
Because something weird's happening now. The police officers come, they send a homicide detective out, and they want us to figure out who Dorothea is. So they, clickety clack. I think they had computers at this point. And
Not clickety clack.
Clickety clack.
They have nails. Clickety clack.
So, anyways, they put her in the system, and all of a sudden, holy cow, her entire criminal history pops up. And you realize that she's on parole, and that she's not supposed to even have that house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, finally, someone noticed. So the guy that the lead investigator in the case was named John Cambrero. Okay? So he's like, holy crap, we need to check this out. And so on November 11th, 1988, the police show up at the boarding house. Mind, they're only trying to figure out at this point what happened with, Bird, basically.
Yeah.
So Dorothea answers the door, and she's like completely unnerved by the fact that they're there. Like, she's like perfectly fine, acting really sweet. They ask if they had permission to search the house, and she's like, yeah, go ahead, guys. I'll make cookies.
She wasn't worried about the death room?
She was not worried about anything. So they didn't find anything in the house at all. The only thing that they could find were two pill bottles that were in Dorothea's bedroom, but they were prescribed to Dorothy Miller. So they thought that was really weird. Like, who's Dorothy Miller and why is this prescription in her room? And then there's also a bottle that was her prescription, like Dorothea's prescription as well. So they go to the backyard and ask if they could like dig around a little bit. And Dorothea said yes.
What?
Go right ahead. Go ahead and dig.
Wow, she's confident.
She's super confident at this point. So they dig for a while, and then they come across this tree root. So the tree root is like stuck in the ground, okay? Like, they're all like just going at it. Like, they cannot get this tree root out to look what's underneath of it. So one of the detectives, I think it was a lead detective, jumps in there, and they're like banging on it. He's pulling on it really hard, and he actually pulls it, and it comes apart, and he falls back into the hole that they're digging. And he looks down, and it's a human bone.
Stop it.
Yeah, he like pulled out a human bone.
What?
Mm-hmm.
That's like straight from a movie.
Mm-hmm. They pulled out a human bone. So they confront Dorothea with this. They like show her the hole and like, why is there a random bone in your backyard right now? This is a human bone. Like, why is this back here? And she says, I have no idea. She acts all surprised about it.
Yeah. Sweet old lady act.
Mm-hmm. So they start digging some more, and they eventually pull the entire body out. It's wrapped in all kinds of cloth and everything, but that's about it. But they can't see exactly who it is. It's like
right.
Decomposed. You know what I mean? It's basically just a skeleton now. It's just a bone pulled out.
Yeah.
Police are like, hey, we found this body. Like, you might need to come down and do like a statement. And she's like, okay, no problem at all. I'll totally make a statement. So she says like, hey, I can't do that right now though. My nerves are so shaken. Can I do it on Monday? Which they agreed to. Like, okay, that's fine. But they're still continuing to dig at this point.
Okay.
So Dorothea is like super upset. She's acting like, oh my gosh, this was in my backyard the entire time. Like, that's crazy. I was living next to this body.
Sweet old lady act.
Sweet old lady act, okay? And at this point, they're not really looking at Dorothea as like a suspect to this murder, like whatever this body's doing back there, because she's this old little lady.
Like, how can she do this by herself?
Yeah, they're looking for Bert too, and they know that Bert wouldn't be like that decomposed at that point.
Yeah.
So they're sitting there, they're digging around still. Dorothea throws like a damsel in distress act and says, "I just need to get away from here for a minute."
And they said, okay.
The leading officer led her out of the crime scene and let her go by herself to get a coffee.
I am so shocked right now.
Yeah, there's actually a picture of, like, because the media circled this.
Yeah.
There's actually a picture of him leading her out by the hand, like around the arm, you know,
Like a
helping
feeble
her.
old lady
Yeah,
helping
helping
her
her
across
get
the
out.
street. Like,
Yes. Yeah, he did not live that
ooh,
down. Like, people
I,
were real mad about that.
yeah.
About 20 minutes later, um, the the guy, the lead detective on the case, is like, she's been gone for a while. Like, that's really weird. Like, she's been gone for a really long time getting a coffee. And about that time, when he starts getting suspicious, another body is discovered. So he's like, "Oh crap!"
Yeah. We
Like,
just let her walk out.
I just let her walk out, and he had to confess that to everyone that that's where she went. He let her go get a coffee down the road. So he runs down to the coffee place, and guess what?
Shocking.
Shockingly, she's gone. She's just ran away at this point. So she immediately buys a ticket to Mexico, and but she doesn't go right away. She buys this ticket, but still stays like in the U.S. in that area still, and like in California area. Um, so while she's on the run, this is making like national news at this point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Grandma
People are
serial
on
killer.
like the
Like,
lookout.
you're like,
Yeah.
holy cow. You know what I mean? So during this time, uh, people were like calling in tips and everything, like trying to give information to the police about where she could be because like there's a murder on the loose.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
People are probably scared. Yeah.
A very convincing grandma murderer.
Yeah.
Like, that's on the loose. So eventually, they get a call from an organization, and it's a halfway house. Where parolees go and they work while they're there, just get a
Yeah.
little bit of integration time. They call the police and are like, "Hey, Dorothea's been like hiring our parolees to do work at her house."
Already?
No,
Like,
during this time period, like during the time period, all this was going on.
okay.
It turns out that the parolees were actually the ones digging the holes for her. And everyone in the community thought that she was so great for this because she was like giving these people that had problems with employment, an opportunity to work. But really, they were doing like gardening work for her, and
They were being like accessories to murder without
they didn't
knowing.
even know.
Yeah.
Like, they would dig a hole for her in the middle of the day, and that night she'd take the body down.
I was wondering,
Yes.
like, how she pulled that off because
She was hiring parolees to do it. Because for one, like, who would believe them? Two, who they can tell? Three, they're desperate for work.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
she's
they would
played this very well the whole time.
And they wouldn't notice. It's like she just went and filled the hole up instead of like
Yeah,
doing anything with it because they're not coming back to check it out. You know what I mean? Super weird, huh?
yeah,
Super crazy.
crazy.
Yes. So at that time as well, one of the parolees from the halfway house calls police and is like, "I really, I need to talk to you about something because I think I was in accessory murder in
Yeah.
another way besides the bodies."
Oh,
Yes, besides
okay,
burying
good.
bodies.
Yeah.
He's like, "So a while back, Dorothea had asked this parolee if he would call Judy, a social worker with Bert, and pretend to be his uncle, and that he was in Utah staying with him."
Shit.
Yes. So that parolee that called, he said that he thought it was really weird, but she was such a nice old lady. They said that she told him that like they were like bothering her for a while because she didn't know where this Bert guy was, but
Yeah.
like, they were still bothering her about it. Her family was like, she knew something. Sweet old lady. He's like, "Of course, sweet old lady.
Yeah,
I'll handle
especially you're
this for
helping
you."
my friends with work and yeah,
like, you're my
definitely.
employer. I can totally see this happening, but
Yeah.
he's on parole and he's like, "Oh my god, like I just did something that
Yeah.
influences the case." So, oh crap. So while she's on the run as well, she ends up being going out to bars and everything like that. Still not just not doing great. And she befriends this elderly man in a bar one night, and she's like talking to him, and then all of a sudden he realizes that she's the woman from the news. And he's like, "Oh crap! Like she's trying to
she's trying to
she's
kill
trying
me.
to she's trying to drug me and like get my
Yeah.
things." So this elderly man calls the police. He's like, "No, like you need to come get her." So the man, like at this point, like Dorothea had told him like her name. She probably didn't say the point that she probably said just Dorothea, but and where she was staying at a motel, like at a certain place. Like, stupid, right?
She is not scared, like, or she's just not thinking.
She's
Like,
like,
why would she do that?
she's just got, I mean, her whole entire life she's gotten away with things. You know what I mean?
She's like, yeah, go dig in the backyard with all the bodies.
Yeah. So, police immediately come pick her up. Like, they find her, it was really easy. They just came pick her up.
Yeah.
So, when police arrive and try to pick up Dorothea, she doesn't even try to lie at this point. They come in there and like, hey, who are you? And she's like, I'm Dorothea Puente. Like, it's me, okay? Which is super surprising. Like, I don't know if she was just like exhausted at that point or what. She doesn't even try to fight it.
Yeah, that's weird. Like, come up with a fake name, or she just gave up.
It was like she just gave up.
Maybe she was trying to get caught. Maybe that's why she said those things to that guy.
Based off the trial.
No.
No.
Okay, never mind.
No.
Terrible idea.
Yes. So, the prosecutors had a really hard case with this. It actually took 3 years for them to get all the information gathered up, and people were really into this case too.
Yeah.
And so people tried to flock to the courthouse. They had to move the courthouse around, make it a secret kind of as best they could. But in all reality, they had no proof that Dorothea had actually killed these people. No one had saw her do it. Nothing else. They had really no proof. So Dorothea says that this is her defense. She says that all of her tenants died of natural causes and that she buried them outside because she couldn't call a coroner because she was running a boarding house illegally.
That's believable.
That's believable, right?
Yeah.
That is very believable. The only thing the prosecutor really had to go off of was that they all had been had the same type of medication in their system, the one that Dorothea was using to poison people. So they all had that in there, but most of them they had to really dig into things to figure out who these people even were.
Yeah, especially she cut the hands off of someone in the head and
yes, and that was the only one. When they found that body, they realized that was probably her first victim.
Yeah,
I mean, because she took care to cover it up.
Yeah,
and actually, the head, hands, feet have never been recovered.
Weird.
Yeah.
I wonder if she's a parolee to hide it.
Maybe. You know what I mean? Hey, can you take this trash out for me?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Something. So they had no real proof at this point. They were just trying to connect everything the best they could. The other only really connection that the prosecution had was that they went through medical records of the tenants there. And they found out that over the 3 years that either the tenants or Dorothea had obtained over 1,000 pills of this medication, which it was a as needed pill.
Yeah.
So over 1,000 pills prescribed, and most of her tenants were automatically prescribed it whenever they got in. She encouraged it because it helped with sleeping.
Right.
I was her big drug. She upped it about. So during this time, police are still trying to identify some of the victims and stuff, getting ready for court. So I guess we'll go back a little bit. They were trying to identify these victims. And they start looking into Ruth's death as well.
Yeah.
And they come into the fact that they get the medical records and everything, that they find out that she never even went to the hospital like she claimed, get the tranquilizers and things like that.
Yeah.
So basically they move it from, the family tries to present it to the police again, they pick it up a little bit, but it's been labeled as a suicide. And they have no real concrete evidence to show hey. At this time too, the police reached out to local police departments and asked them, hey, do you guys have any elderly people that have been unidentified from all these years ago?
Yeah.
And they one police department did. It was for Everson. So they finally got a name to Everson.
Good.
Yes, they finally got him settled out, and his family was notified at that point. So in total, Dorothea went to trial with 9 murders. Look, she was looking at 9 murders.
Wow.
Yes.
How have I never heard of this?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. She was, that includes 7 tenants and then Ruth and Everson.
Yeah.
Her fiance. So her best friend and fiance in there too.
She was ruthless, dude.
So she totally admitted that she stole the government checks. She's like, yeah, that was my bad. And that
My bad. Whoops.
And that, that she didn't call they died of natural causes and everything, but that's about it. That's all she would admit. Before trial, they gave her the option of, you could get life in prison without the possibility of parole, or if you go to trial, we're going to go for the death sentence.
Yeah.
Which honestly, like, she was like old at this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In that Sharon Marshall story, we talked about that guy was on death row for 18 years.
Yeah,
you know what
that's
I mean?
true.
You know what I mean? So
Either way,
man. So, the jury was absolutely deadlocked in this. The trial took over a year to do, and then the jury deliberated for 6 months.
well, I don't understand because the evidence was like
Super
circumstantial. Okay,
Yeah,
that
it was
makes
super
sense.
circumstantial. It was hard to prove.
Yeah.
Like there were like some real doubt that could be in this case. So it came out after a lot of deliberation. It came out like 11-1. 11 people agreed that she did it, and one person was like sticking to it. Like
Yeah.
she did. Like there was no proof that she did this. It was just adamant that she hadn't done this. But eventually, after the 6 months, like he didn't agree to it, but he just said, "I'm no longer debating this. We've been talking for 6 months about this. I can't do this anymore." So they come back and they read what they've come up with to the judge. They find her guilty of 3 murders, and then they do the other 6 as mistrials.
Okay.
So
still enough to
she's
keep her in there.
Still enough to keep her in there.
Hopefully, with her history, you never know.
Yeah, she might talk right out of it.
Yeah.
So then the jury goes back to deliberate on the death sentence. That takes forever too. So eventually they're like, "We don't know. Like we can't do this, judge. Like you do this. Like we can't do it."
What?
Yeah, they could not decide. They could not do it. So it went back to the judge.
Okay. So the judge is going to make the final decision.
So the judge makes the final decision. He decides that he or she, I don't know, decides that they're not going to seek the death penalty for her. That life imprisonment was enough for it.
Yeah.
So while Dorothea was, serving her prison sentence, because she ends up dying eventually in prison.
Right.
Serving her prison sentence, she becomes she's super popular. You know what I mean? Because she was a nationally known serial killer, so people are weird and they write to them and stuff.
Yeah.
And one particular man actually helped her write a book about her life story and about her baking skills, because she was a super good baker. And so this book is published as well about her, a memoir for her.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I don't know, in the memoir, I don't know, you see a lot more about who she really was. Honestly, I'm kind of on the fence a little bit with it, because
I was gonna bring that up because when I said, should I feel sorry for her, and you were like, you're mixed. I don't feel like I'm mixed.
Well, I do.
I feel like I'm she's just taking people to the death room all the time. She has a death room, so that's a problem.
Well, actually, they recently, in 2020, they produced I think it's a small play about her. They produced a play about her, talking to them about the other side of who she was. That she was just super desperate for people to like her. But then I'm she was greedy. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm iffy with it. I think she was really good at dissociating what she was really doing with people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think they try to say too, in their mind, these people are already sick and dying, so she might as well take care of them.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Maybe because she likes to care for people, she thought that was caring for them, taking them out of their misery or something.
But she also
caused the misery.
And kept their benefit checks the entire time too.
Yeah.
You mean? So I can see a lot of characteristics alcoholism in there, a bad start, survival skills.
Yeah.
But she also killed 9 people. You know what I mean? Took 9 people out of this world.
That is.
Mm-hmm. So she ended up, served her sentence until she died. She proclaimed her innocence until her death on March 11th, 2011. So the anniversary was just coming up just a few days ago.
Ooh, good timing with the story.
Yep, she died on March 11th, 2011. And she just remains super popular. It's kind of been a while since, people really bring this up, because it was, in 95, I think she got finally convicted.
Yeah.
So it was in 1995. But
still though, I was 5. We were 5.
We didn't watch the news.
Yeah, but I feel our families did, and they would have brought that up. You never hear serial killers anymore.
But Anna, like, what do you mean bring it up to their 5-year-old children about this mass murderer?
My family is very open.
My family was like so protective. They were probably like, she crushed some flowers, and everyone's really mad about it now. So, I mean, people still kept interest in her for like a long time. Like her grandson, I wonder if her. That's why I say they don't really get brought up a lot. That her other children, but probably the one that lived with a relative. Her grandson was actually like contacted and like really like sought after for her ashes. People wanted her ashes as like a collectible for her, and were like going to pay like high prices for them. I think one was like $25,000 for her ashes, and her grandson like refused to sell them to him.
Yeah,
because he claimed like people didn't know her, that she was actually like this. Like, she'd always been like super sweet to him, and gave like the whole sympathy thing about it.
Yeah,
yeah. Grandson looks a little weird. I'm gonna say that. He did. He like had like maybe I'm just imagining this. He had like the Freddy fingers. And I think I imagined that because I thought he was really weird. That doesn't sound like
doesn't even sound like a human.
I mean, this is how I viewed him, like the way he looked in the camera. I'm gonna just look it up after this. But yeah, that's it. Like she lived a really full life, and then she died in prison.
Yeah, that is super crazy. Like I'm gonna look some stuff up. And we'll definitely like post the pictures. I can't wait to see them either. And probably the name of her book.
Yes, I'll throw that in there as well. Because I actually listened to like a bunch of her interviews as well with the police. They all recorded.
See, I do that too with my cases, and I'm like, we should really put this like little clip in there, and we just are not to that level yet. But maybe one day we'll start putting like
the clips in there.
Yeah, I definitely want to when we get to like BTK and definitely like the bigger cases, so we can, feel like everyone's more in the story. So, okay. That was our first two-parter, and that was exciting. That was super exciting. So I hope you guys liked it. Let us know what your thoughts on the case and who you want to hear us cover and things like that. Go over and like our Facebook and Instagram
and definitely check out the pictures because they are really going to open your eyes about a lot of this.
Yes, please. The picture that we talked about last week where she looked like Miss Doubtfire. Yes.
Yes. You won't even believe it. It's crazy. And I'm going to check if that guy had Kruger hands or not. I don't think he did.
She made that part up. But alrighty. We love you guys, and we'll talk to you next week.